Assalamu alaikum. We welcome you to today's Talim by Masjid Al-Taqwa, and as a resident Imam, Tariq El-Amin. I greet you all, those who are joining us right now and those who will view this program later on. I must, of course, give recognition to our Talim committee headed by Dr. Aisha El-Amin, also consisting of Drs. Lionel Allen and Dr. Gloria Bashir. Today's conversation, we're going to be talking about an upcoming event that we're really excited about. That is the inaugural Chicago Black Muslim History Tour that's taking place on February 18th. We'll be departing from Masjid Al-Taqwa, and we've got a lot of sites that we're going to cover. We've got some great presenters who are also joining me today, and I'm going to bring them up on the screen as well. We have, matter of fact, I'll just, as I pin them, you will see them come on. You'll see we just brought on our beloved Imam Rabbani Mubashir. We have with us as well, let's bring on Sister Latifa Wangara, and bringing on as well Brother Bashir Assad, Brother Roderick Bashir, and is Brother Clyde El-Amin. Is he with us yet? I don't think he has joined us as of yet. But when he comes in, we will add him to the pin. First of all, thank you all for agreeing to have this conversation, this presentation, to kind of talk about some of the behind the scenes, how this came into view, your thoughts on it, some of the spaces that we're going to be visiting. I'm starting off by saying that because this is the inaugural effort, this was us kind of putting our toe in the water. We've got a single coach tour bus that seats 56, and all 56 seats have been taken. So alhamdulillah, praise be to Allah for that. Inshallah, we look forward to giving this offering again and, possibly increasing the attendance. But for the time being, we're going to start out by I want to just pose the question, why is this event important? What do you see as some of the takeaways from this? And who wants to take the first crack at that amongst us?
I wouldn't mind a crack at that.
Go right ahead.
I think it's vital that people know who we are, because if we don't remind them, if you don't put it in front of them, we will be forgotten. They will erase us as we watch. So I think it's important that we let people know that we're here, what we've accomplished, because we've accomplished a lot in this community throughout in every city, and we're vital to those cities when in the work that we do.
I'd like to add a perspective on why the tour is really very, very important, is because here, Chicago has a large chapter in the history of African Americans, and particularly the Muslims, a large chapter, this having served as the headquarters for the leadership, the 40+ year leadership of Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And it just has that large of impact on the lives of so many Muslims, outstanding Muslims, not just to mention Muhammad Ali, but all the great figures had to recognize that this was a movement that influenced the thinking of African Americans. So I think it's central for really recording history, documenting this history.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to add to that, and this is something that all of us have noticed, but particularly when it comes to the media or to reports on our community, or even history books that are written regarding the African-American experience, it tends to be viewed through Eurocentric eyes. And that concerns me greatly, because looking at life through Eurocentric eyes, as Sister Latifah said, we will not be able to present our own story. There's a African proverb that says, until the lion is able to write his own history, the victor will always be the one to tell the story. And so I think that's important for us.
Absolutely.
And I would, in relationship to what Rod said, because we complain each year during this African American History Month that we are not a part of that focus during the month. There's hardly anything that is related to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Imam Ward D. Muhammad. They will talk about those connected with the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's leadership, Malcolm, Malik el-Shabazz, and Muhammad Ali. But there's very little credit given to these two great leaders. So this is our opportunity to put the focus on their leadership and what they've accomplished for the benefit of African American people and people at large, for the whole of humanity.
Right, right.
I'd like to say that it's just an idea whose time has come. It's just so natural. It's incredible that we are sitting on such a treasure. It's every city in the country or any island or anything would identify what is it that it has that would attract people. And it would feature that. It would be in its brochures. It would highlight it. It's recreational. It's important points. Those things that people want to see. And we are such an important part of American history, African American history, that not to have something like this to identify our important historic points is just incredible. Somebody could come here and ask, why are you all sleeping on this?
Yeah.
This is economic value. This is, the Chamber of Commerce should want to see this or hear this from us. They highlight everything back to Al Capone and all sorts of tours. And my goodness, this is so important that this should be developed now and refined and publicized. It's not just from the fighting from the negative, but this is a positive. This contributes to the community overall.
Absolutely. And I want to take this opportunity because I want to recognize our reach. We may sometimes think, we're just confined to the folks who are in the virtual space at this moment, but recognizing our reach, I want to properly introduce the brother who just spoke. This is our founding Imam, Imam Dr. Mikhail Ramadan, who served as the resident Imam of Mesh al-Taqwa from its founding, I believe, in 2000 up to 2013. So that's who you just heard from. Those who are joining us, who are seeing this later on, but most folks who are with us right now who are aware of that. We just also had Brother Clyde El-Amin join in. He is one of the presenters on the tour as well. And I want to just kind of bring up to speed the question that everyone has responded to thus far has been pretty much, why is this important? What is, and in a nutshell, that's it, and do you have any thoughts that you might want to add to that?
You're talking to Brother Clyde El-Amin?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's Clyde El-Amin.
It's interesting. This is a perfect time for you to ask me that question, because I was just relaying to my daughter that we were doing this tour. And, you know, we wrestled with how to keep our children interested in what we're doing.
Right.
And she said, why are we only doing it on African American History Month? Shouldn't we be doing that like maybe every week or something like that? I said, well, yes, you're right. You know, first I almost showed surprise, and she said everybody would want to would want to participate in this. You know, this. You know, I didn't. I've been trying. I've pushed so many things. I've been subtle. I've been subliminal. I did all the different kinds of seduction. You know, and this is the thing that got the interest. And I think it's because they immediately probably see some of what Dr. Ramadan was talking about. You know, I mean, our young people, they look at they're looking at this from a wider worldview. They're looking at us from a wider worldview all the time because they're in that all the time. And so they immediately go to like, wow, that sounds cool. You know, they don't use those words, but that's the reaction that you're getting. And I know that's the basis of that reaction.
Yeah.
And
I want to go back to a point that Brother Bashir made, speaking to Brother Bashir Assad. We got two Bashirs here. Speaking to the lack of recognition historically that has been given to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and of course, that also extends to Imam Warthadi Muhammad. Noticing this right here, popular perception would lead many to believe that the Nation of Islam in its current state, the current iteration of the nation, that it goes back, that there's not a, we talk about that there's a continuity that actually that does not exist, right? It goes back to what, 1977 as its current iteration. In 1975, you know, we throw these numbers out, you know, as a community, you know, we're aware of them, but upon the death of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in 75, and Imam Warthadi Muhammad is elected unanimously as the leader, and then begins this transition, this historic transition, this reorienting, building upon the foundation that was put in place by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, by his father. And of course, this is also a part of the framing that we are talking about, a tour that celebrates the cultural, the historical markers of the community of Imam Warthadi Muhammad, which goes back to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. How is this also something that is this something that you are also, that you grapple with, that you think about in terms of that current presentation or current perception of folks, and how this tour can also act as a way to expand people's understanding of that history and the reality that they see today?
I think
go ahead. No, you go ahead, sister, please.
I think it will be a way of reintroducing us to them in our history, because in many cases we ourselves forget part of our own history. But it will be useful to not only us but to everyone else, because we, like Rabani was talking about, how we have influenced so many people. We have, you know, we've had people come study us and then go back and do whatever they do. And we need to benefit from our own hard work and labor that our pioneers put into this. You know, we need to benefit from it. And it's up to us. I think this is the beginning of us taking back our stuff, which is our history. So this can be the beginning of us taking our stuff back and packaging it ourselves, you know, truthfully, you know?
Yeah.
I think it'll be very beneficial. I really do. I do.
I think this is so big, to follow up on what you're saying, that you know, when we had the Study Al-Islam had that celebration of Imam Warthadi Muhammad that we all participated in. This is so much bigger than I think we might be looking at it now. People, I could see this as so big that when people want to come visit Chicago, they would schedule their visit around the tour, around the time of the bus tour. That might be monthly or bi-weekly or whatever. The scholars in the future, they can't even write about our history unless they've taken the tour to hear all about the historic locations that we've had in our history. This is a moment that we can present what you were saying, our perspective, and how we see the line going through. This is because we're not presenting that anywhere now, you know. But when you hear and see it in the bus tour, and each of these places has its own history and perhaps photographs and how it's all tied in, this can be very big. You know, this is like the kickoff.
I agree.
Our real presentation of our history. That if you ever go to Chicago, you haven't seen anything till you at the bus tour.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely.
I really, could I make a comment?
Yeah, please do.
Because it's the beginning, like that. It could be the beginning,
right,
of the research, returning to the research of the Nation of Islam. I don't know if y'all can see this.
Yeah.
What is it?
Black Muslims in America.
Dr. C. Eric.
Right.
This probably was the first real study, actual study, not looking through just some newspaper clippings or reading a couple of, books from people from the outside, but he actually came and visited Honorable Elijah Muhammad, sat with Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and studied the history of Honorable Elijah Muhammad's life from Georgia. So he's looking at it as a whole new development of thought. And this is really where the term Black Muslim comes from, and Dr. Lincoln acknowledged that. That he was the first for the media to pick up and begin to try to get in line with the changes that were occurring in the African-American community. But on the front page, it says that this was 1961, a movement of 100,000 Negroes. So in keeping with Dr. Ramadan's vision of the importance of this in history, American history, now we say during the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, when Imam W. Muhammad came into the office, they listed like 2 million. Matter of fact, Tony Brown's journal interviewed Imam Muhammad and said, "You're the leader of 2 million African-American Muslims." So that's a big page of history to just leave out. That's a huge, that would distort history to leave that out, because we don't know how we got here, except through these down this path of thinking, influenced other people. Even if they didn't become Muslims, they were influenced by this movement. So it was so much in the face, right? Especially in the South Side of Chicago.
Right.
It's not just a brother on the corner with Muhammad speaks in his hand, but it was this actual visual benefits that were businesses that were being built, constructed from the ground by people who had been counted out.
Brother Bunny, that's the point I was attempting to make, and I don't think I made it very well when I indicated that we tend, and I'm not just talking about the African-American community, I'm talking about in many cases, in most cases, I would even say immigrant Muslims tend to look at our experience through Eurocentric eyes. And by that, I mean, what's acceptable to the European community is what is generally promoted. And who is promoted by us has to be approved by people other than us. So you don't hear much conversation about the Honorable Elijah Muhammad or Imam W.D. Muhammad or any of our, many of our leaders. But those that are acceptable, those are the ones that you hear about. And we have to be very conscious of not being seduced by that element. So we go back to the point that if we don't tell our story, then it would not be told appropriately. And as Sister Latifah mentioned, with the truth. And we're not getting that, even from our very prominent historians. They leave out very critical chapters of our history because it's not acceptable to others in our society.
And I can tell you, when you start looking at the economics and the politics of academia, it also is not always congruent with them maintaining their jobs and continuing to get research money, et cetera, which is really that's the economic engine of the field that they may be in. Dr. Sierra Lincoln, first of all, I admire his courage, but maybe it wasn't just courage, maybe it was also ingenuity. Right. Because if it's one thing I always appreciated about the Nation of Islam before I even became a member of the Nation of Islam, because I didn't start watching the Nation of Islam in Chicago, I started watching it in Detroit. I didn't come to Chicago until, I guess I probably started really consciously watching it in maybe 1964. I'm like a junior in high school and seeing them downtown, just interacting with the brother. You know, there's this restaurant called the Shabazz restaurant on the east side of Detroit. You know, we knew they had good food. We knew they ate healthy. And even moving through college, I'm still being influenced by that. And what I noticed in comparing Chicago and Detroit, the so-called epicenters of African-American economic progress in a number of cities seems to always be geographically close, if not like right up against where the Nation of Islam is functioning. It's not far away. It's never far away. And in fact, it even seems to move with the Nation of Islam because, when I don't remember, I wasn't here when what they call Bronzeville was like the hub, but I know it was a hub at one time. And as you all have shown me these histories of the addresses of places that we have had the masjid and the school, it seems to be close to that. In Detroit, on the west side, we call it 12th Street. Now it's called Rosa Parks Boulevard. And all that's really close to where Masjid Wali Muhammad is, And I think you find a similar pattern in New York too, because the media wasn't going to get the word out about us. We were getting the word out about us by what we were doing in the midst of our people.
Yes.
I want to bring attention to 2 points within this. One, a lot of times people look at the representations, today of the nation. You see a brother out selling the final call. Before it was, selling Muhammad Speaks. But the representation was never, and I got to point to one of our tour stops, 26 and Federal, where this is where production took place, right? The journal, the Muhammad Speaks, was printed at 26 and Federal, and that's Imam Rabbani. That's one of your spot.
Yes, and the most crucial point related to that, when I hear you say that's where the Muhammad Speaks was printed.
Yeah,
it was printed by African Americans.
Yes. So let me add this on too, and then feel free to jump in. Failing to simply give the representation of the product itself, right? Without showing the back end, without showing manufacturing, without showing the print shop, without showing the know-how for distribution, right? And just to simply show the paper, as powerful as a representation as that is, it really leaves out a huge part of the story and a huge part of the idea of nation building and what it takes to keep a nation fed in terms of its intellectual acumen, its to motivate it. What's at the heart of the nation? It's going to be information. And so that's one of the spots on the tour I'm really excited about, because it digs deeper into this presentation that is just it's been incomplete.
Can I jump in here?
Absolutely. Brother Bashir.
And that's important too, what you just mentioned. Organization. Imam Wadi Muhammad pointed out to us, that this is what society is about, organization. And the Nation of Islam was an organization having all of those elements in it. But what I'd like to point out too is these two great leaders, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Imam Wadi Muhammad. They said I think this was back in the 60s, that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was the most powerful Black man in America.
Mhm.
Imam Wardi Muhammad was pointed out to be in the book by, I can't think of the author's name right now. Somebody might have Taylor Branch. Yeah.
Taylor Branch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, that he was the most unappreciated religious leader of the 20th century. And when you look at these two statements, that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad was the most powerful Black leader of his time, Imam Wardi Muhammad was the most unappreciated religious leader of the 20th century, then you ask the question, well, why? Did they have a tremendous amount of money? You know, because when you look at leaders today, you look at money or some other material accomplishments they had, although we did have some material accomplishments during that period of time. But it wasn't that so much. It was the knowledge and information that they were providing for society and humanity. This is what made him powerful. In fact, this is what made Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam so powerful, and all of the prophets so powerful. It was what Allah had imparted to them to give to humanity. And the Imam pointed out early in his mission, he said, this is the resurrection of the African-American, the Black man. He said the first resurrection and the second resurrection. And he pointed out that the first resurrection was the material resurrection. And we know in that same concept, when a child comes out, he's first formed by fluid. And that fluid evolved, the child comes out, he's unformed. He's making his way in the world. He's just beginning to learn. He's just beginning to get an understanding of this world he's coming into. He's learning language. And all of that period of time, he's forming. Also, when he gets to a period of time, he's got to gain his balance. So during that period of time in the Nation of Islam, it was a material time. The child is not formed yet. His mind is not formed. He hasn't come into that maturity as yet. So during that period of time, and the Imam, he said, that was the time of the first resurrection. We were just coming into Al-Islam. We were coming in, we said, Assalamu alaikum, wa alaikum assalam. We didn't know the Arabic. We were learning how to be decent Muslims, how to dress, women dress, men dress, all of those things. But he said, then he talked about a man coming to be the caliph. He said, to make the caliph, he has to have a spirit. He said, wait till I put my spirit into this man. So now we're in a development period of our time now that we're coming, and I'm talking about this evolution that we're having. And that's an evolution that we have to point out that this community is growing in, that process is growing in. And I think it's very important for people to know this and realize that. And the contribution that we're talking about African-American History Month, the contribution that these two leaders have made to the African-American freedom movement.
Mhm.
Remember, in the Nation of Islam, it was freedom, justice, and equality for the so-called African-American Negro. That was the thrust. Everything that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad did was for the betterment and the growth of African-American people. In fact, several rights leaders, Imam Wardi Muhammad pointed, they called him father.
Mm-hmm.
So the leaders, Martin Luther King, and they respected the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's insight in what he was doing. Although they may not have agreed with his religious concept, they agreed with that particular movement. And when he went on Umrah, and you have to remember too, during that period of time, this was during when many of the African nations and Middle Eastern nations were coming out of colonialism. They looked at the Honorable Elijah Muhammad as a great movement in the world. Abdul Nasser, when he went and visited him, he wanted the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to stay there and teach them. He said, I'll build you a house, I'll build you a school, stay here. So even the world leaders understood the significance and the importance of this man. And if we look at Imam Wardi Muhammad, how he was sought out after all over the world, Muslim countries invited him to come and speak to their conferences. And we know that in the Senate that he was brought there. Even here in America, many colleges he went to and governments that invited him to come and address them. So we have a great history. That's all right.
Like my slum. All right. That was appreciate that. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah.
Could I ask Brother Bashir a question?
Yes, sir.
Do you recall what the total number of distribution of Muhammad Speaks was and its peak, its high point?
Well, I know they said it was the largest circulating African-American newspaper during that period of time, but I don't remember the exact number.
The numbers. I know it was.
I recall reading it.
It was at least, it was, I remember when it was being stated that it was 500,000, almost 500,000 a week. And that wasn't the latest figure that I got. I mean, I think that was when I first started hearing things about the community in terms of numbers. And that was me studying it from the I hate to say from the outside, because even before it was official, a whole lot of us knew that this is what we were leaning on. You know, a lot of us didn't have the title Muslim or had not stepped in or written a letter, but we knew what we were leaning on. We knew exactly what was driving us. Some people didn't know it as precisely as others, but don't think that the day that people walked in to the community is the day that they started following.
I'm a witness.
Okay.
I'm a witness.
You know,
because when I first came to the temple, I had a necklace of a crescent, moon and star.
Right. I mean, Philbert Omar was advising us up at U of M when we were raising hell up there. He was
Omar's Malcolm's brother, right?
Malcolm's brother. He was coming up about every 2 weeks, you know. We knew that he was advising us. We didn't want certain other people to know it, and he didn't want other people to know it either, so he could keep doing it. So there are lots of stories like this. The other thing I wanted to say, brother Bashir, you brought to mind, I have found myself on a number of occasions reading some very scholarly, high-level journals from, I call it the religious scholarship community, and how they see the Imam. And people who don't know that would not think that these people, they didn't necessarily run and tell all their people what they were seeing, but what they were writing makes it very obvious, you know, that they saw the Imam for who he was. They didn't necessarily go and give up their seat of a power or authority, but they definitely knew.
So let me put this out there. Obviously, from a branding and from an attention standpoint, we realize the impact of having the inaugural tour during Black History Month. But we also recognize that a part of the growth and evolution of our community from the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to Imam Wardi Muhammad has been in how we see ourselves, right? We take a lot of, we pay attention to names, right? So we've gone from Negro to were we colored first before Negro? Or
Yeah.
Colored after? So colored, Negro, Black, African American, and actually before African American, I think we were Bilalian.
Yeah.
Before the term.
In our community, yes.
Yes, in our community, right? So we are sensitized, you know, to the idea of the name, not just for the sake of the name, but for understanding, you know, a higher reality. And I connect this also to to the Imam's title, you know, Muslim American spokesperson for human salvation, right? To see the importance of the nation itself, of our own community experience, but also to see that in service of and attached to humanity, in service of humanity. All of that to ask you, how do you see some of these spaces, right? Because there's an evolution that's present in some of these locations and up to the present. How do you see them with regard to how we see ourselves today? The name, some folks, it ruffles the feathers, you know, when you hear Black Muslim, even though we didn't coin that term. We've used it, and then the Imam, he used African American later on. How do you see that in terms of how we are situated right now, and what does this tour do for that?
Assalamu alaikum. How are you doing, Brother Tariq? This is Layla Abdullah.
My sister Layla. Go ahead on.
Okay. I think that's a very good and poignant question. I would kind of like to come from a different position, a different perspective, and that is from someone who is not a part of the Nation of Islam or the Warsi Muhammad community, but very much have a history. My father was Nation of Islam and then Warsi Muhammad. And I was born, when I converted, I became Sunni Muslim. But I think that one of the things that's important about the name and the perspective as far as Black Muslim, and that is very important, is and I think we need to really start to honor and embrace the whole idea of African American Muslim, only because there is a Black Muslim population. There's a Black Muslim population that includes us, and we're the very foundation of that Black Muslim population, but it's not exclusive to us. And I think one of the things that's important that in the work that I've been doing, you know, I just published a piece in Hot Hijab about being pious. And I really ended up tackling with that whole idea of Black Muslims versus African American Muslims. We have, like I said, we're the foundation of Islam in America. And that may include other ethnicities, backgrounds, even other diaspora Black Muslims, because the majority of Blacks in the world are actually Muslim, that we need to take that stake and claim that stake and really voice it more. You know, even with this tour, that's one of the things that I've seen as someone who's outside of, who is not a part of the Nation of Islam or Warsi Muhammad community, that this is our history. This is my history. This is my heritage as an African American Muslim. And it is so important in Islam in America to just show that, you know, it's still happening. We were at the Black Muslim movement. It was at the foundation of the Black Muslim movement, establishing this deen in this country, establishing it as a religion in this country. And it continues to be that in that the Islamic American Muslim heritage in its totality. And we need to, instead of so much for so many years, it's been like this actual attempt to erase us, okay, by Black diaspora Muslims, by non-Black Muslims. So I think we need to really kind of claim that and say, listen, this is the foundation. This is the reason why the broader society is looking out and looking and turning around and says, oh, what are these Muslims about? What are these from the 1930s on to today? It's just an important and foundational thing. And we've been so important and foundational, instrumental and implemental in so many movements in African American society and American society that we really need to be up front and to really like post our position as African American Muslims.
Thank you so much for that, Sister Layla, author, educator, frequent collaborator when I was host of Radio Islam, does a lot of great work. If you want to drop some links in the chat, to your work, please do so. She's also joined us for Talim in the past. I want to ask our panelists to also weigh in on that as well.
I would first of all, she brought something to my mind, and I thank you so much for that, sister, because you set me to thinking again about like how we do that. When they released the Muslim this Muslim survey that was done, by the coalition, and the audience that they were talking to when they basically did the release and they did the presentation over at UIC, what I was trying to explain to them, it was difficult because there's a lot of subtleties that I know they didn't understand. I was trying to say to them, for the audience that you are addressing this afternoon over here at UIC, and I believe, Imam Tariq, I believe you were there, weren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. I knew that wasn't the audience of people from the Black community primarily. So for that audience, if you're not going to explain what you mean, you can't just say Black Muslim. You got to, at some point, you got to say, yes, you did a cross-section of Muslims, included Africans, African Americans, people that Minister Farrakhan's community, et cetera, et cetera. Because if you just say Black Muslim, the way the media has played this game, they're going to think that you're only talking about people from Minister Farrakhan's community. And I said, you're researchers, you're scholars, you should be very, very obsessed with clarity. That's your. I was at an event yesterday that put something on my mind that I've never seen this happen before. A Muslim from India who taught at Kennedy King while I was there, and who I had a very warm relationship with. He passed away in the last 10 days or so. They were finally getting around to having, I guess it's similar to what we would call a repast in the Black community, but they buried him like the next day. And they were giving his history and how he was reporting to them what was happening, because he taught at Kennedy King pretty much his whole career with city colleges. So he was in Inglewood on the South Side the whole time. And he told them that he got involved in politics and the struggle because he realized that the only reason he got into the United States in the late 60s is because the change in immigration policy was one of the outcomes of the civil rights movement. And most of us don't think of that as something that is a result of what we did. But it was included in the civil rights movement, I think 1960, between 65 and 67, whatever the particular year is. He was very conscious of that. And that made me aware that a number of them are conscious of that. Most of them didn't do what he did in terms of taking actions that show gratitude like he did. It was one of the reasons that made him stay at Kennedy King. He loved that. He felt like he was paying something back by working in the African American community, teaching. When he started teaching, IT was kind of a new thing then, and he got involved in a Harold Washington race for mayor of Chicago because he just felt like he had this connection and this kind of sense of gratitude to African Americans. And I didn't know this guy ever thought about me when he went home. His family was telling, yeah, he kept coming home talking to us about Clyde El-Amin, that you were a dean and you were president. He was so happy. And I love this brother. But I had no idea that he had this kind of sense of connection and respect for us. And one of the highlights of his life was on the South Side. He met with Jabber and Muhammad Ali one day. And, we have impact on policy even that we don't know that we've had as African Americans.
Brother Clyde,
Yeah.
if I could, I do want to make good on one of the statements, I guess, even before we got on, when we say we're kind of giving a background of the tour. I want to address two things and then get your input, get you all's input. First off, I want to let everyone know, even though, we've only got 56 seats on the bus, those are taken, we do have an hour long presentation that will be live streamed. So those who are interested in joining in virtually, you are more than welcome to do so. And that information will be put out through our normal, communication, email, newsletter, and text. Second thing I wanted to mention to you, we've mentioned I think one of the stops or maybe two of the stops so far. I want to give you an overview really quickly, just run through where the tour is going. Okay, so this is not necessarily in order, but I'm thinking about it as we leave from Taqwa. We will be going to what is now known as Mosque Mariam, but was during the leadership of Imam Warthi Muhammad. It was Masjid Elijah Muhammad.
Honorable.
Masjid Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Thank you so much for that. And the Sister Clara Muhammad School, which I'm a proud alum of, will be going past Guarantee Bank. This is a real jewel, and I was so glad in our kind of get-togethers, our conversations that it came out that this should be part of it. The Nation of Islam, under the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's leadership, bought the controlling interest in the bank. So there's a lot of wonderful history in that. So then we'll also go down to we'll go past Masjid
Al-Fatir.
El-Fatir.
Al-Fatir, yeah.
On 47th, we will see the former home of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad on that's also on Woodlawn. It's a little enclave. We'll be going past that home. There are 4 other homes that were built. Muhammad Ali's home. Will be going down to the site of the first original temple number 2, excuse me, which was on 43rd. We still got to narrow down
53rd and Greenwood.
No,
43rd.
Yeah, not that spot. The one that has special connection to Masjid Al-Taqwa today, because as we have renovated a former animal hospital, this was also a former animal hospital that was renovated. And this was the first space that our community was in. So we talk about our roots. So 43rd, we'll get down to the 26th and Federal, where Muhammad Speaks was printed, the distribution site. We'll go on over to 39th. And what is that? Is that Halsted, Brother Bashir?
Yes.
39th and Halsted. The land packing, the slaughter was done there as well. We will go over to the Ephraim Baha Cultural Center. We'll get a presentation from, I believe, most likely it'll be Imam Omar Kareem. We'll get over to the Salam Community Wellness Center. We'll have a presentation from Dr. Constance Shabazz, and folks will get a little bite to eat over there as well at the Eat to Live restaurant right next door. We'll head out to Mosque Cares. Brother Rod will be doing a presentation that's going to include not just Mosque Cares, Ministry of Imam Warthi Muhammad, but also talking about the he'll make a mention of CPC and the resolution that was passed by the village of Hazelcrest. Hazelcrest is a village, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So the village of Hazelcrest, well, there's the Imam Warthi Muhammad Day, right? I think this is extremely, significant. And then we'll make our way back to Taqwa, where we'll have presentations, myself, Imam Rabbani, Dr. Aisha. We've got 3 wonderful performances. I was looking forward to being able to recognize our founding Imam. He won't be in town, but inshallah we'll be able to join us virtually. So that's the tour. In these last few minutes that we have, I want to jump to one particular spot on that tour that was mentioned, and that's Guarantee Bank. And we think about the importance of finances and economics in building a community and building a nation. Are there any? And Brother Clyde will be presenting on the tour. But are there any thoughts that we can bring out right now that are relevant for the future in terms of what we saw in the past in that particular acquisition?
You're saying the acquisition of the bank?
Yes. And you know what? I don't want to be restrictive. That's what I was thinking about. I wanted to pop to that. But if there's any particular point on the tour that you want to kind of speak to right now, feel free to do so, minute and a half or so.
The trucking industry, trucks that were owned by the Nation of Islam. The most modern, the up-to-date trucking that was purchased. In history, of course, taking Muhammad Speaks and other things, matter of fact, products from the farms and bringing them to Chicago and so forth and so on. But that was then. Today, we have the El-Amin Brothers Transportation.
El-Amin.
Talk about how these things have evolved. I think it's the largest African-American trucking transportation, El-Amin Brothers Transportation. They can park 100 trailers. They got space there. It's the most modern freezer, cooler. I mean, just the idea of this business enterprise, how it has continued in our community, I think is really the lessons that we are looking to learn from as benefit, that we've benefited, our generation has benefited.
Let me
But it
point
goes
out
back
too.
to El-Amin. Khalid El-Amin was the original. So now his sons have continued.
Let me point out the Guarantee Bank.
Mhm.
Everything that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad did in the Nation of Islam was for the improvement of the living conditions of African American people. We live in a capitalist country.
Right.
Capital is needed to start a business, buy a home, purchase a car, do all those things. So the bank was an effort by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to provide capital to African American people. We hear you know, today we hear the situation still exists for African Americans to get capital, get money in order to do the things that they need to do to progress. So everything that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, the Nation of Islam, was doing was to provide those necessary things in a society that we were not getting. As he said, we wanted freedom, justice, and equality. We were not getting it, so we need to do something for ourselves. And so that was one of the efforts, the Guarantee Bank, to be a vehicle for capital for our people to be able to do those things that they needed to do in this society.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a very important point, Brother Bashir. And I just wanted to add to that, that we as Muslims, unlike many might do in their own communities, we do not separate ourselves from the general African-American community.
Right.
We see our community as one community. We're not separate from them, from the rest of our community.
Other thing I guess I'd say about the bank, like everything else the Nation of Islam did, was often imitated by others in the African-American community. You know, our sense of priorities, etc., were often, I'm saying our now as African-American, were often set or refined by what was going on in the Nation of Islam. So everybody's now saying how important it is for us to have banks. You know, Chicago had Independence, Seaway.
Chatham.
What's the other one?
Chatham.
Sure thing.
Yeah, Illinois Service Federal, etc. And actually, Sister Hafisa Bahar, who had a major role with Guarantee Bank, she basically ended up being vice president over there at Seaway Bank for a long time, playing a major role over there. So that's the other thing. I know what we did, and I can't remember the words the Imam used, but he basically gave the idea, he gave the thought that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad also knew that he wasn't just teaching those of us that were coming to the masjid listening to him. He knew that he was teaching a whole lot of people that maybe never came to the masjid, and he wanted them to imitate what we were doing, and they did imitate what we were doing, you know. And I saw the bank there as a great example of the power of that. You know, other people already knew, the people who did not want us to succeed knew how important it was for us to have a bank.
Thank you. So in these last 3 minutes, Brother Rod, if you could give us a minute, maybe, you know, as brief as possible, right? But to speak to the question, the resolution that was made on behalf of Imam Warthidi Muhammad. A lot of folks don't know about that. Could you give us a little bit, you know, just for the benefit of those who are present, those who will watch later on?
Yes, toward the latter part of Imam Muhammad's leadership, he encouraged his followers to move or relocate if they could to the south suburbs. And it was his thinking that it would provide less of a burden on us in an area where we could grow in so many ways, politically, economically, socially, and not have the burden of the big city on us. And in that that move, he himself moved to the south suburbs, and as a consequence, established relationships with civic and political leaders. And some of those leaders thought so highly of him that they, on their boards of trustees and as mayors, decided that we should honor Imam Muhammad. And so in the village of Hazel Crest, there is a day set aside on September the 3rd, which is honoring Imam Muhammad. And the language says September 3rd of each year, of every year, that day is to be celebrated as Imam W.D. Muhammad Day. And so that is it in a nutshell.
Thank you so much for that. We got a couple of questions that were posted in the chat, Brother Algie. And I guess I want to say it's important to remember this is an inaugural effort. Although it is in Black History Month, we're not, the tour certainly is not confined to just the history. That's why we're also visiting present institutions. That's why we end back at Taqwa. And the idea is for us to talk about that history, but also to speak about how it informs the work that we're doing today. So it is past, present, and future, very much so. The question that was presented, I think about the define Black Muslims, NOI, Malcolm X, W.D. Muhammad, Black Muslims in Islam, says why recognizing Black Muslims is important and the role Black Muslims played and play in America. I'm not sure if that's if that's so much a question as it is, things to consider as we present our history. And I should say that I believe that in the conversations that we've had, these are very much present, in how we've shaped how we're shaping the information in our presentation. So that being said, because this is inaugural, this is the first one. Understand, we're not hitting everything. This is the first, inshallah, of many. And we want to get some in warmer weather as well. But the whole thing is it's important to take that first step, and this is that first step. So we are imploring, we're praying that Allah blesses us to bring the intention to fruition. So you all who know this history and know the value of the history, be patient with us. We're going to do our best to represent. And as we move forward, it will get, inshallah, it will get better, bigger, and it certainly has the opportunity to be that offering that informs how other people talk about Islam in America, and talk about African American Muslims in America as well. So that said, yes, Sister Latifa.
I wanted to say this is the first step, and you always have to start with a first step.
Yes.
And we're building on the foundation of the past. I know someone said something in the past. We have to have a past in order to know what the future is. You have to stand on something. We're standing on the shoulders of those who have paved the way for us to be where we are today. And we want to look at them, and we ourselves want to pattern ourselves after them to make greater accomplishments. And I think one thing that I think we have overlooked is during the Nation of Islam, when you had to write that letter, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad knew that there were people that could not write. That was to help them learn how to write without the embarrassment of knowing that they couldn't write. I think that's vital. I think we overlooked that. I think we should take a look at that because that's very important.
Alhamdulillah.
One other thing, if I
Thank
can,
you.
before we
I'm sorry.
before we leave, if I can make this last statement.
Brother Bashir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so what I want to do, I want to actually close us out, but we can hang on a few minutes, and this just for the recording, right? So we're not going too much over. And then you can go ahead and make that statement if it's okay. Or
Okay.
is your statement a minute or less?
Make it in a minute.
Make it in a minute.
Okay. We need to realize that our contribution, the Nation of Islam, the leadership of Imam Wardi Muhammad, has benefited African Americans, African American Muslims, Muslims in general, in this country. We've been vocal and out forward, I think, possibly more than any other organization, Muslim organization, African organization, and people, African American Muslims, Muslims in general, the United States of America has benefited from our efforts.
I mean, thank you. All right, I thank our presenters for joining us today. I thank you all for joining us, and inshallah, we look forward to seeing you next Sunday. We'll take this time to close out with Surah Al-Asr. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Wal Asr. Innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa amilu salihati wa tawassaw bil haqqi wa tawassaw bis sabr.